Here's how most founders find out their sales process is broken. A deal they thought was closing does not close. They do a post-mortem. They decide the rep was wrong, or the timing was wrong, or the prospect was never really serious. And then they move on. The process never gets examined. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 signs that tell you your sales process is broken before a deal has to die to tell you first. If you recognize 3 or more, your process needs structural work before any other sales investment you are planning will pay off. A new rep will not fix a broken process. The process has to come first. The 5 signs. Sign 1. You cannot predict your close rate from week to week. If someone asks you what percentage of qualified opportunities you close and you have to guess, or if the number swings by more than 15 to 20 points week to week, your process is not generating reliable data. A working sales process produces consistent activity against consistent criteria. When those criteria are applied, close rate stabilizes into a predictable range. Founders who do not know their close rate within 10 points are flying blind on the most important leading indicator in their business. Ask yourself out loud, what is my close rate this quarter? If you hesitate, or if the number does not feel reliable, this sign applies to you. Write it down. Sign 2. Every deal starts differently. Script in a working sales process, there is a defined entry point, a specific trigger, a specific first conversation structure, a specific set of qualification questions that every deal goes through before it enters the pipeline. When every deal starts differently, some from referrals with no first call structure, some from outbound with a different opening, some from a conference with a completely improvised first conversation, you do not have a process. You have a collection of individual deals that happen to close sometimes. That is a sign most founders push back on because it feels like a strength. Multiple entry points feels like a diversified pipeline. That documentation is the difference between a sales process and a sales personality. The test. Could you hand a new employee a script for the first 15 minutes of every sales conversation, regardless of how the deal came in, and have them represent you accurately? If not, entry point is not defined. Sign 3. You lose deals and do not know why. Win-loss analysis is the most underused diagnostic tool in founder-led sales. And it's simple. After every lost deal, a deal that goes dark, declines to move forward, or chooses a competitor, ask one question. Why did this not close? Most founders skip this entirely. The deal dies and they move on. The emotional cost of revisiting a loss feels higher than the potential insight. That calculus is backwards. Every lost deal that you cannot explain is a process failure, not a prospect failure. The prospect made a decision based on information they had. If you do not know what that information was, you cannot address it in the next deal. Start tracking lost deal reasons immediately. Even a simple framework with 5 categories works. Price objection, timing or no urgency, chose a competitor, internal change of the prospect, and no decision or unknown. Track every loss for 60 days. The pattern that surfaces will be more useful than any sales training you could buy. Sign 4. Your pipeline has deals that have not moved in 30 days. Stalled pipeline is not a prospect problem, it is a process problem. A deal stalls when there is no defined next step with a confirmed date attached. In a working sales process, every deal in the pipeline has a specific next action assigned to a specific person with a specific deadline. And when that action does not happen, the pipeline review surfaces it and forces a decision. When there is no process for that, the deal just sits. Founders look at stalled deals every week and call it a long sales cycle. Sometimes it is. More often, it's a deal where the next step was never actually confirmed. The prospect said, "Sounds good," at the end of last call. The founder interpreted that as an agreement to move forward. The prospect interpreted it as a polite close to the conversation. Pull your current pipeline right now. For every deal, what is the specific next action? Who owns it? And when is it confirmed to happen? If you cannot answer those 3 questions for any deal on your board, it is not in your pipeline, it is in your wish list. And wish lists do not close. Stalled deals have a compounding cost. Set a simple rule before your next pipeline review. Any deal with no confirmed next step in the next 14 days gets moved to a reactivation list or killed. No exceptions. Run this rule for 1 month and watch your pipeline get smaller and more accurate simultaneously. Sign 5. You cannot explain to someone else how you close. This is the most important sign and the most honest test you can give yourself. Sit down right now and try to write down step by step exactly how a deal goes from the first conversation to a signed contract in your business. Not the ideal version, the actual version. What really happens? If you find yourself writing, "It depends," that is the sign. If you find yourself writing, "Usually at this point that is a sign. If you look at what you wrote and realize the only person who could run the process is you, because every decision point requires context that only exists in your head, that's the sign. Almost every founder at the $500K to $2 million stage has built this pattern. The pattern works, right up until you need someone else to run it. The process that only lives in your head is the ceiling of your business. Not your product, not your market, not your rep quality. The undocumented process is the root cause beneath the others. Unpredictable close rates, inconsistent entry points, unknown loss reasons, stalled deals. All of them trace back to a process that was never made explicit. Making it explicit does not require a consultant or a platform. It requires 45 minutes. Here is the honest read on where you stand based on how many signs you recognized. 1 or 2 signs, your process has gaps, but the foundation is there. Fix the specific signs that apply. 3 or 4 signs, your process is built around you personally and will not survive a sales hire. Stop any plans to hire until the infrastructure is in place. Building the process is the hire readiness work. All 5 signs do not hire anyone yet. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to run a weekly pipeline review that changes what actually happens in the deals the following week. Not just a reporting exercise, but a decision-making exercise. Subscribe so you catch it. Drop the one sign that hit closest to home for you. I will tell you exactly where to start.